Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Psyched to be with you. This is episode 4 now, I think. What a wild time we're having. Today, got another very special guest with me. As per usual, housekeeping for the talk show, the alerts muted, all things like that. Let's just get stuck in. So this is one of those interviews that I knew I wanted to have soon as I was doing this type of project. My special guest, I'll pass it over to you. Please tell us who you are, what you do, and what you like to do when you're not doing that.
Hi, so I'm Rachel Button. The reason that Chris and I know each other is because Chris is a regular visitor to my cafe in Liverpool, which is a board games cafe called Sugar and Dice. When I'm not at Sugar and Dice, I have another job. I'm also a psychotherapist, and I try to incorporate using board games into my therapy work. And then when I'm not doing either of those jobs, I've got a couple of different hobbies, but I'm struggling for time at the moment. I love going out walking. I'm a member of an amazing walking group, Merseyside Young Walkers. I play the piano, and I play a lot of board games. So it's a bit like a busman's holiday, my days off.
So as you can imagine, we have got a heck of a lot of awesome stuff to be talking about already. Let's sort of just talk about like work-related things. So, what have you got going on sort of in Sugar and Dice at the moment? What's coming up there, and then then sort of psychotherapy? What's going on with that?
Yeah, so Sugar and Dice, obviously we were closed over lockdown, so we reopened, it's been about 3 months now. So it's slowly kind of getting a bit more normal and we're getting a few more people through the doors. So we had kind of suspended all of our events and things. So we've just started bringing all of those back. Mostly role-playing games, Dungeons and Dragons is coming back. At the moment, we're getting a lot of meetup groups. So I think, a lot of people have obviously been stuck at home for a long time throughout COVID. So there seems to be a lot of uptake on people coming along with different meetup groups. So the kind of next step with Sugar and Dice is to try and bring back more of those events. We've actually got, it's a sort of an intern coming along to come and help us with some marketing and things like that. So to help us and with their event ideas and event planning. So hopefully in the next sort of month or so, we'll have somebody whose job it is specifically to be working on that side of things with the business. I always have loads of ideas of things that we can do in the cafe and then I never get time to execute them. So if it's somebody's job to do that, then hopefully some of them will actually happen now. So it's all very exciting. Hopefully more people will be coming and it'll be full all the time.
I mean, okay, so, full disclosure, as we noted there, I'm a huge fan of Sugar and Dice. It is a little slice of heaven on earth, in my opinion. I'm not paid to say that. That's why, Rachel's agreed to join me today. But that's great. I mean, it's nice. There's always a nice hubbub, a nice feel when you're in the cafe. I think it has a good atmosphere. But I think I was gonna say when you were saying, we've got all these ideas. I very much get the impression that you have all these ideas and then you get busy and then don't have a chance to execute them.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, a victim of your own success, as it were.
Yeah, so we've actually signed up. It's a government scheme called Kickstart. So we've signed up to the scheme, and it's a scheme that helps us as a business, but also helps a young person to get employment. So it's they come along and work for us full time, pretty much for 6 months to gain experience. But we are allowed to pick somebody that's got experience in the right area. So we're interviewing at the moment people that have got a little bit of kind of event planning and social media expertise. And then whenever we've chosen the right person, they'll be coming along. So I can just throw those ideas at somebody else and tell them to do it. So, hopefully that will all work out. We really want to get the open gaming back. So we got people coming on their own so that they can just play with other people and making new friends. When we did that before, we would donate a percentage of the money that we made to Mind, because it's all about kind of making friendships and combating loneliness and making connections with people. But we've also got ideas to get gaming sessions for toddlers in. We've got games from 2 years plus. So we want to get, we've got all these different groups of people that we can sort of focus on and get them in and playing whatever games it is that they enjoy. So there's
you've
so
got to
many
start.
different
You've got to
markets
start
that we
them
can
young.
tap into.
Start them young. Get them
Absolutely, you've
get
got
them
to
on the good stuff
indoctrinate them
now.
at 2.
Yeah, like there's this whole world of board games. You're right here. Let's get them on it.
Yeah.
What other events do you, if I remember correctly? Obviously, like D&D, Rainbow Gamers is another one. Rainbow Games.
Absolutely, yeah.
I mean, I actually went to one of your open gaming events, the Deception Night. I think it was in October.
Oh, yeah.
There is nothing more fun than playing like Werewolf, or Ultimate Werewolf with a group of strangers where everyone is putting on wild accents and being all types of whimsy. I very much enjoyed that. So can you tell us about those, a bit more of those events like Rainbow Gamers, for example?
So Rainbow Gamers is kind of a regular night almost, but again, we donate a percentage of any money that we make on that evening to a local LGBT charity. So whoever comes along, they can vote whichever charity they want to raise money for. So we've raised money for the Armistice Centre, we've raised money for the Michael Korza Foundation, the YPAS, the Young People's Advisory Service. So there's been lots of different sort of charities that people are really passionate about and want to give back to. And it's a really nice way for people, people can come and have fun, but they're also raising money for their favourite charities. We also kind of tend to bake some sort of rainbowy cake for them so that, we can really go all out on the theme. But it's, importantly, a lot of the LGBT community just find it a really safe place. So it's somewhere nice that they can go to where, everybody is welcome. Everybody knows they're accepted regardless of gender or sexuality. And we've had really good feedback on that front as well.
Yeah, and that, let's be honest, that's incredible. If more spaces and places picked up that kind of ideology, the world would be a much nicer place, right?
Yeah.
So I've got like a few different avenues of questions I kind of want to go down, but let's just talk about. So let's go back a little bit. How did Sugar and Dice start? Were you just one day there, a woman with several hundred board games and the ability to bake brownies that literally are fit for the gods, and go, maybe I should monetize this?
Yeah, I wanted a cafe from a really young age. I've always been a baker, I've baked cakes for fun, and when your family sort of go, oh, you should have a cafe, and I was like, yeah, I should do that. And then as I got older, I was like, oh, actually, can I do this? The doubts sort of set in, and I actually went off to train to be a food technology teacher. And then after 3 years of teaching, I thought, you know what, packs of young people aren't for me. And I just sort of decided to open a cafe. And I was sort of thinking, how am I ever going to make it unique? Or, there's so many awesome cafes in Liverpool, what's going to be different about mine? And I actually visited a board games cafe down south somewhere, and I just thought, oh my God, this is it. This is what I want to do, and I think Liverpool's the right place. So it all just kind of started from there. And I still look back. We've been open nearly 5 years now, and I still can't quite believe that people pay money for my cakes that I make, and that it is a success, and people are coming, and we've hopefully got through COVID, and and it's all okay. So it kind of blows me away a little bit.
Okay, so let's just quickly talk before the origin story. Let's talk about the baked goods, okay? Because this is serious business. I have to ask. You don't have to disclose it live, but what is in those brownies? How do you? I've tried to bake brownies. It always goes wrong. I've tried these really funky, healthy brownies, like sweet potato and all that kind of crap.
That's where you're going wrong.
I've tried just normal brownies. It just doesn't work. But I will confess, I have literally mail ordered Rachel's brownies several times in batches, including through lockdown, because they are just like a beautiful substance. How? I don't understand it.
It's just a typical brownie recipe. There's lots of butter and lots of sugar, all of the naughty things. We put lots of sweets in them. I think the after eight brownies are probably after eight and chocolate orange brownies are probably the most popular. I think chocolate brownies, genuinely, it's one of the first things I ever baked. So I think I've got 33 years experience of baking brownies. So
it shows.
I guess I've just got the knack. So.
It shows. I mean, this is okay. So this is the dilemma, right? I've had your cakes as well. I've had various cakes. They're good. right? Like no shame, no shade on those. But the brownies are they're just another level. I don't understand it. It must just be that expertise. I feel obliged to ask because we're British. Have you ever been tempted to apply for the Great British Bake Off?
No, no,
Fair enough.
actually not. I do love the Bake Off. I wouldn't want to be on TV. I don't think yeah, I love baking cakes.
No one,
I'm
no
not
one
good
tell
at.
Rachel she's live on Twitch. No one, just.
I wouldn't. I don't think I've got the different skills that they have on the Bake Off. Like I can bake bread, but I'm not that good, and I don't particularly like it. I like making pastry, but I'm a bit lazy, so I don't. Do you know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like I can do cakes and I can do brownies, and that's fine. But I wouldn't want to be sat there making bread on a stick on a campfire like they did in one of the final. Like, just no, it's not for me.
No, that's fair. Okay, so you debate good. So I'm presuming you were a board gamer before the cafe as well. That was the other string to it, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
did you just have a
yeah.
huge collection, or
Not a huge collection. I had some of the kind of classics, modern classics. So, I had Settlers of Catan and Ticket to Ride and Pandemic, and then a few other kind of quirky games. And then as soon as I sort of thought, oh, I think I want to start a board games cafe, honestly, every single birthday, Christmas, whatever, I just got board games. So like for about 3 years, like it was just buy me these games, and they weren't for me. They were to sort of start collecting ready for the cafe. So when I look back at pictures from 5 years ago, we barely had any games. Like I look at it and we've got one game in the shelf cube, like face on to take up space. And now we're constantly like having to, any game that hasn't been touched in a month goes, like, because it needs to be replaced with something newer or more exciting or more interesting. So it's yeah, when you look back at how it's changed, it's interesting.
okay? So then I have to ask, and again, we will get to the origin story. We will, but I have to ask, like, what are some of your favorite board games? What do you like to play when you get a chance, or better yet, to maybe frame the question a bit better, someone comes in and says, I don't know what to play. What are the games that you recommend that you like? Oh, play this.
Yeah, so I've obviously, like, we've all the different stuff have got different favorites, which is good. So we're all kind of suggesting different things. Me personally, I mean, I like animals, so any game with animals in, I'm sold, basically. So quite recently, I think it was last year, a game was released called Calico, and you have to make a patchwork quilt, and then depending on how you place the tiles, a cat may be attracted to your quilt and come and lay down and have a sleep on your quilt. And you get points for your cats at the end of the game. And I just, not only is it about cats, but it's a really, really great puzzle game as well. So I'm absolutely in love with that one. And it's just beautifully made as well. Like, it's a gorgeous game. There's another really, really silly game, I don't know if you've seen it, called Taco Cat Goat Cheese Pizza. And it's got the cutest artwork. It's very similar to Dobble in that it's a speed game, and you have to sort of put a card down, and each time you put a card down, you say taco, cat, goat, cheese, or pizza. And if the card matches what you're saying, you all have to sort of fight to get your hand down on the pile of cards first. And it's just daft.
Is
Do you know
is
what I
that
mean?
is that like a simplified Dobble then? Because Dobble like is quite. Not only does it come with different variations, but for those that don't know, Dobble is like it's a card based game. There are multiple versions you can play, but they all have different images on, and you're essentially playing like Snap. So you flip your card over, you put it on the pile, and you look for an image that matches one from the previous card. Right? That's the generally how you
Yeah.
play Dobble. So I'm a visually impaired person. I find Dobble quite difficult because the symbols change in size, particularly if you're playing a themed one where I have no idea what something is. Like I've played the Harry Potter one before, and like I'm not the biggest Harry Potter fan, so I'm like the wingy thingy.
Yeah.
So is it like
I
a
think
more
you'd find
simplified version
this
of
one
that?
easier. Yeah. It's kind of, I'd say it's probably a similar difficulty level because it's so simple, your mind gets then confused and you start playing rules to other games. So you start snapping when there's a match and that's not what you're meant to do, and then you have to pick up cards if you make a mistake. It's just, I think we played it right at the end of the last lockdown, and I haven't laughed that much in ages. And I was like, this is what the world needs right now. We all need this stupid little game that fits in your handbag that, we could just giggle at, and it's just, I love it so much. It's great.
Okay, that's great. Okay, this is again slightly different. But how do you feel about digitization of some games? So like Carcassonne, for example, like that has a very popular video game, an app version. Are you like an original is best that should be played on the tabletop kind of?
Yeah, I am a bit. I don't really play computer games. I don't really. It's just
Blasphemy.
I have I have Steam, and I have like games on Steam. I don't think I've ever touched it. I don't think I've ever opened it. For me, it is about being there with people. It's about the social connection, and it's to then sit on my own at home and play it online. It's not, that's not what I'm going for. So I guess it's not actually about the games sometimes for me. It's about the people that I'm with and the experience that I get from it, rather than, obviously I'm picking good games as well, but it's about being with people.
Okay, no, I mean that's fair. I mean, like Carcassonne's kind of a bad example, really, because one of the benefits I have of that is that it automatically works out the farms, the farmland on the
Oh yeah.
tiles, because that's so hard to do like offline. But like,
Oh, do you know what? We get so many people that come into the cafe and they go, "Yeah, I know how to play Pandemic," because they've played it on a on a computer somewhere, and then 2 minutes later they're going, "Rachel, what do I do?" Because they've got no idea how to set it up or what any of the rules actually are, because it's just done for them. That just makes me chuckle sometimes.
yeah, it's definitely different. I do agree, though. I think there is something special. I mean, again, like I've recently started playing D&D because of an event that yourselves run at Sugar and Dice. We actually played Parks yesterday, which is a newish game. For those that don't know, it's you gather your hikers, you gather materials, and then you buy Great American National Parks. And like the core concept of the game is very simple. You gather resources, you spend tokens. But my word, the art style's beautiful. Like it's just that you could just
Yeah.
look through the cards and just have a great time and not even play the game. And that is something that you just wouldn't get on a screen.
Mm.
Some of them look like
And the
Bob Ross
pieces are
paintings.
beautiful. Yeah.
Oh yeah, the
Yeah, and
pieces
it's
are.
the tactile nature of picking up those pieces, and especially that game, like they're all beautiful, like little wooden pieces, and you've got all these little wooden animals, and yeah, there's just something about having the game physically in front of you it just really appeals to me.
Okay, so let's dial back. Give us the actual origin story. I know I was joking, like you were one woman with a bunch of board games and some baking ability, but how did Sugar and Dice come to be? You always wanted a cafe. How did you make it happen?
Yeah, so I quit teaching. That was step one. And while I was kind of figuring out what to do, I was baking cakes for other people's cafes. In doing that, I met a really good friend of mine called Hannah, who used to own a cafe up the road called Fodder. And I would borrow her cafe to trial out board game nights. So, she would put on loads of scouse, and then I would just bring a bunch of games, and we sort of charged people a ticket entry to come in. And they were really, really popular, which was obviously a good sign because it meant people wanted that. And then through that, I actually met two people who became my business partners. So at the beginning, there was three of us. And we all kind of had the same vision, like we'd all been to other board game cafes. So we all kind of knew what we wanted it to look like or what we wanted it to be like and the atmosphere and all of that. So we kind of, we got started. Well, we were going to do it, and then we thought, oh, there's so many things we want to do, and we didn't quite have enough money. So we started a Kickstarter, and the Kickstarter funded. I think we got £14,000 from the Kickstarter, which is just, again, it blows my mind that enough people wanted this to put money into that. And that allowed us to kind of get nicer tables and nicer chairs and improve the lighting. It paid for the alcohol license, so there was a lot of things that money went towards to kind of help make it better. And we got up and running. And then my business partners, they kind of, had lots of different interests. They'd done lots of different things before. So after about a year or so, once it was established, they decided that they wanted to go and pursue other interests. So I bought them out, and I've been running it on my own for 3 years, I think now. I think it's about 3 years now. So we're just coming up to our 5th birthday.
Oof, I mean, so again, it almost like is again like I know what Kickstarter is. I've backed various board and video games on it, it's almost like great to hear that that type of project exists on it as well. And like, it's just maybe look at what's in your local area, peeps. You never know, you might be funding the next Sugar and Dice in your part of the world. And let's be honest, the world needs more sugar and dices, more sugar and die. Maybe, not the best marketing on my part there. Sorry. So, have you got anything planned for the 5th birthday? Any big events?
Not yet. No, I haven't had a second to think about it. I think it's been hard work. I'm not gonna lie, it's been hard work, kind of getting it back up and running. Like with COVID, every time we were asked to close, it's almost like starting from the beginning. Every time you reopen, people don't feel safe, or people are a bit cautious. So you've always got a few people that are desperate to get out, and that they're there on day one. But then it takes time for people to be comfortable enough to come back. So I feel like we opened at the end of May, and we're only just kind of getting to a point where we're busy enough. Like we've just brought back 2 members of staff who had unfortunately been let go. So like we're kind of just getting the staffing levels back up again. And so I haven't had time to think about the birthday party, but there will definitely be Prosecco and cake. So do you need any more than that, really? And games, obviously.
I mean, no. Let's be let's be honest. I mean, let's talk about. I mean, I don't want to be like, let's talk about COVID some more, but just as your insight as like a small business owner, you mentioned that it was like having to start again. What did you do to adapt? Because I know a little bit about that, but for the benefit of listeners, like you came up with a couple of, I'm going to say, innovative ways to keep things ticking along.
Yeah, it was obviously not ideal to be told to close your business. And I'm so thankful for the funding that we got, because we wouldn't have survived without that. So credit where credit's due. The government kept us going. But we did lots of kind of little bits and bobs. So I ended up doing board game rentals. So on a Saturday, I'd kind of march down to the cafe and block the door off, and people would like order which games they wanted to take home for the week, like from the door. And we did some takeaway cake and stuff like that. We changed our alcohol license so that people could take a couple of beers home with them as well, and sort of recreate Sugar and Dice at home. And then I also started running like Zoom parties. So groups of people would join a Zoom call, and there were various games that I could adapt or run via Zoom. There was quite a few evenings I was busy running these Zoom parties. They weren't big money makers or anything, but it kept people engaged with the business. It kept me busy. It kept me entertained. And actually it was really nice to kind of, this sounds really nosy, but it was really nice to see into people's homes. And so, I met loads of people's cats because they would hold them up to the screen. And it was nice to kind of have that connection with the customers in a different way. It was different but fun.
I have to ask, how did you because when you mentioned using Zoom, the first thing that came to mind was like you just like show people the board game and like you're moving all the pieces and stuff. Like, how did you adapt? Like, what was that process?
Yeah, so we did more kind of like party style games. So it mostly kind of not trivia game, trivia games, but also, I don't know if you've heard of a game called Herd Mentality. So in Herd Mentality, it's kind of, you get asked these silly questions like, I don't know, what's your favorite finger? And you have to answer, but you're trying to write down the same answer as everybody else. So you want to be in the herd. Oh, okay. So, things like that. And everyone was writing down their answers and then holding it up to the screen. And every single time people were going, oh, it's backwards. And it's like, it's fine for everybody else. It's just backwards for you, But yeah, people enjoyed them, I think, and quite a lot of people would have, it was usually a celebration, so birthday party or something. But we had the sweetest group of doctors, did a couple of these sessions, and they all ordered the same cocktails that were posted through each other's doors. And bless them, they ordered me a cocktail as well and posted it through to the cafe so that I could join in. So again, it's that shared experience. Even though I was working, it was really good fun. Didn't feel like work.
I mean, that's what you want, right? I also have to ask, what's your favorite finger? Because that is a great question.
Oh, I don't know if I could. I don't know. Obviously, I think I'd have to just put middle finger, just for the the banter for that.
Now, like, you know, I'm the one doing the psychology, but I'll be honest, my mind panicked, and the first thing that came to mind was ladyfinger, which obviously, for those that don't know, it's a baked good. I'm gonna clarify that.
You use the, is that not what you use in a trifle?
Yeah, it's like ladyfingers, then you traditionally lay them with brandy or something, don't you? I believe.
Mm-hmm. Just add booze, just any kind of booze. Yeah.
Yeah. So, just what's your favorite finger? That next icebreaker. Next time you need an ice-breaking question, go with that.
It's a great game. Everyone should come and play it because it will definitely spark conversations, and you will find out things about your friends that you never knew.
I recently played Scrawl at Sugar and Dice.
So Herd Mentality is the same designer.
Ah, right, okay. So again, for those that, like, for listeners' benefit, Scrawl. I mean, feel free to Google it. But it's essentially like written/drawn charade. That you're given a thing, you have to draw it. You pass that on to the next person. They have to draw what you've written. The next person writes what you've drawn, and you keep passing it along till it gets back to you. But obviously, so it's all like Chinese whispers as well. And like that's like you whisper something and then you change it. I'm not sure if that's actually like a correct term nowadays. Apologies if it's not. It's probably not. There you go, colonialism. But like, yeah, it's a really fun game, and it can get so out of hand so quickly, and then it's all about having like the biggest laugh, and that kind of like it almost becomes less about the game and just more about the laugh that you're having about how silly everyone is. Like that's the kind of energy you want, right?
It's so much fun. I love that game.
Okay, so talked a lot about Sugar and Dice. Let's sort of depart that for a moment. Tell us about your psychotherapy work.
Yeah, so
as if you didn't have enough to do.
I know. I'm such a glutton for punishment. So again, when I was a kid, I wanted a cafe, but then even from quite an early age, I think I was about 12 or 13, I sort of said, I want to be a counselor. I want to help people, and I want to look after people that are struggling a little bit. So yeah, we got Sugar and Dice started in 2016, and I started my psychotherapy training, I think, in 2017. So a year later, started the training. It was a 4-year course. So yeah, I finished that last year, and I was able to sort of set up private practice. And we were always encouraged to kind of use creative methods within our work. And I had a really, really good supervisor who was super encouraging and was like, well, why don't you play games with your clients? And I was like, oh yeah, what a good idea. So sometimes, I mean, I don't do it with everybody. It kind of depends on the client and what they're bringing. But without going too deep into the theory, so I practice transactional analysis, which the kind of core foundation of is that we all have these 3 different modes of operating. So we have a parent mode, we have an adult mode, and we have a child mode. And quite often, one of the things that when we're struggling, it's kind of, sometimes for a lot of people, it's because they didn't really have good child experiences. They had a lot of negative child experiences. And sometimes I sort of see my job is to get those positive child experiences in, because we learn through play and we learn through laughing. We learn so much through playing games. And sometimes it's almost like reverting back to that kind of younger self and having a bit of fun and playing a game and learning different sort of concepts or values through playing a game. For some people, it's just an icebreaker at the beginning of the session. For some people, sitting in a room staring, with somebody staring at you and telling them your deepest, darkest secrets is too much. So, if we've got a game on the table, there's a distraction. So if it does kind of become above their tolerance level, they can sort of go back to the game. And that's not to say that we're ignoring the problems, but, it's very obvious to me kind of where the tolerance level is. And then we can sort of pull back a little bit and maybe address that later on, or, something like that. So I've been seeing clients for a year now, mostly online because of COVID, but we're slowly getting back to kind of face-to-face sessions. And, having both businesses, quite a lot of people go, oh, that, you're a psychotherapist and you have a cafe, like what's that all about? But actually there's quite a big link between the two. And especially for me, you know, going and playing games is my child time, and to go and have a laugh and have a good time with some friends. And, you know, we see so many people in the cafe, or, you know, the feedback that we've had from people is it feels like a safe space because you've got a game in front of you. Like there's like a bit of a psychological barrier there. We get lots of people on first dates, I think, again, because you've got something to talk about. There's something like, you know, if you've got those awkward moments, you can go back to your game and sort of start playing again. And, you know, there's a real safety in these board games. So that's kind of where the link is between the two jobs, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I say a lot, like, in my sort of personally, I'm not a therapist, but I mean, from what I understand, you know, there is a bit of I'm gonna say boom in like making those connections and putting that together. I know like of several therapists that use video games in play in the same way, because it allows people to they're focused on the activity that actually facilitates their ability to discuss things that they maybe wouldn't do otherwise. I mean, you said it yourself there, that awkward scenario of just sitting a foot or two away from someone, they're just staring into your soul, making notes. That's quite a traditional and very intimidating picture, right?
Yeah.
Whereas,
yeah,
like,
so I try and avoid that.
Yeah, whereas incorporating a game or something, I can see that going pretty well as well. Like, you know, there's a big thing like I know a whole there's an organization like Geek Therapists, and I know there's a whole like, you know, using tabletop RPGs in therapy, because like, you know, you can use that role playing experience to go through a lot of things. And, you know, there's that whole joke that not all characters have to have a troubled past. You know, like, challenge yourself to play a D&D character whose parents loved them and they had a perfectly good upbringing, and it was, you know, there was no austerity. We can dream. It's called roleplay for a reason. And like how, like, how many people go for that trope straight away? And I think the psychologist in my brain is kind of like, oh, well, that's because a lot of people like resonate with that. It's kind of what the stories we expect to have and portray.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you know, I don't want us to get like too analytical in terms of like I mean, I have to listen to theory and stuff all day, but I mean, how do you physically, you know, that must be taxing, not just because it's both jobs, but like, how do you manage being a therapist, like, generally?
It kind of, I guess I mean, it is a taxing job. You know, you're listening to people with very big and very real problems. There's an element of kind of having one toe in the water, if you know what I mean. So, you know, I'm there and I'm present and I'm with them and I'm very empathetic. But at the same time, you kind of have to keep in your head that they're not my problems, and, you know, and I'm there to facilitate change or to help. But, you know, if you start taking those problems home with you, then something's not quite right. Within our training, I think within TA, there's quite strict regulations. So when we were training, we had to do a lot of personal therapy ourselves. So, you know, I've had 4 years of quite intensive personal therapy. So obviously, like, you know, I'm quite aware of my stuff and, you know, my sort of triggers and things like that. So, you know, if you have a client that you know is going to bring something that could trigger you, you know, there's lots of things. I've got a supervisor that I can talk to, but even just, you know, the whole reason that I wanted to have the cafe as well is because I've then got a very sociable, a very fun job with colleagues. Whereas the therapy stuff, you know, I'm working on my own with clients. And if I did that 24/7, I think that would be too much. But having both jobs kind of, although they're both stressful in different ways, it keeps me sane because I've got that difference between the two. And I, you know, if I've had a bad day in one of the jobs, I'm going to the other job the next day. So it feels like a different thing. So it was a deliberate choice to kind of do both and to be involved with both, partly to keep me sane. So, and if I'm sane, then hopefully I can help other people.
No, that makes sense. You know, so a question has come up in the chat. They have asked, what would your thoughts be about using psychoactive substances in therapy? The subject has recently saw a lot of attention and shows much potential. Like, these substances have helped people bring out their child mode, as it were.
I think it's, you know, it's not something I know a lot about, so I'm not going to claim to know very much about it. It's something that I'm quite interested in. I know people that have had really positive experiences, in taking substances to try and help them get into this child mode. I think for me, I'm encouraging people to contact that child mode without using anything. So, without drinking, or without taking any drugs, or without kind of filling themselves up on sugar so that they're hyperactive. Like, what I see it as is that we should be able to switch between these modes quite organically, and it should happen quite fluidly. I'm very in touch with my child mode, and I don't need anything to help with that. So I think that's kind of, for me, that would be the goal. I think, if we're becoming dependent on a substance, or we're using a substance to help us get there, whatever it is, whether it's legal or illegal, that raises questions for me, regardless of, I know there's been lots of studies that have had positive kind of, positive outcomes, but then, I'm also quite aware that people can manipulate data to sound positive when actually it's not. So I guess I'm a bit skeptical about that.
No, that's fair. I mean, it's not something I know anything about, but from like an academic point of view, that whole, yes, a study finds, well, one has to scrutinize the methods that they've used, and the data and how they've used that, and all those sorts of things. But it's an interesting thing to, I don't know, consider, I guess, and it's that this is a thing that's happening. Obviously always consult a physician and don't do anything illegal, I guess, is good, like, PSA. But yeah, it's an interesting kind of like, this exists and it's a thing. Certainly. Yeah, sorry. So going back to Sugar and Dice for a minute, you mentioned like maybe like a few of like first dates and things, you've seen that type of stuff. Along that kind of line, have you got any Sugar and Dice like stories? Like, has anyone like given birth in Sugar and Dice?
No one's given birth, thank God. I'm not sure what I would do. I'm a trained first aider, but I'm definitely not ready for that. Do you know what? I don't know really. I know we definitely get a lot of first dates. I know we've had people that have met their partners on a date in Sugar and Dice, and they've gone on to kind of be together for a long time. I don't think I've got any exciting stories on that front, sadly. So trying to wrap my brains, but I really don't think there's anything. I'll think as soon as we stop, I'll be like, oh, I should have said that. Yeah.
I mean, have you seen?
No, sadly, it's not that exciting.
Do you know of any like first dates that have like, I don't know, if people then got like not necessarily engaged in Sugar and Dice, but like married from a date in Sugar and Dice, maybe?
Not that I know of. I know people have definitely kind of met at Sugar and Dice, and then they sort of make it a point of coming back for anniversaries. But yeah, I don't know if anybody's then gone on to get married or anything like that. I hope they have. That'd be great. But
I mean, like a board game themed wedding would sounds amazing.
I mean, what more could you want?
Yeah, exactly. Like, why not? Okay, yeah. So let's take work, put that to one side for a little minute.
Yeah.
And I realize that you're a very busy person, but let's talk about what you like to do when you're not working either of those jobs. You mentioned like walking before. Like, what do you do to unwind from all that? What do you enjoy doing?
Yeah, so I love the walking group. So the walking group is called Fill Your Boots. It's an offshoot of the Ramblers, but it's specifically for kind of young walkers in Merseyside. And it's just one of the best things I ever discovered. I only discovered it just over a year ago. And I've been in Liverpool for donkey's years, and it's been going the whole time. And I'm kind of annoyed at myself for not finding it before. But they kind of, I don't drive, so they put on a minibus, and we just meet in town, and this minibus picks us up, and we go all over. We go to the Lake District, Peak District, Wales, Shropshire. Like, they literally, I get on a bus, someone drives me somewhere, I follow someone around on a walk for a few hours, and then someone drives me back, and quite often we end up having a pint in the pub or something afterwards. But again, it's a social experience. Like, I've made so many friends there. Everyone's lovely. you've got people from all walks of life. Literally, we've got university lecturers, PhD students, to people that work in factories, or it's just so varied, and they're just a great bunch of people. So I try and get on some walks as often as possible. And then over lockdown, I bought myself a piano, so I'm also trying to learn the piano. Again, that's a slow process, that one, but I can play a few things that sound okay.
So the piano, I mean, like, I'm a big fan of the instrument. I don't play it myself. I I do guitar, a little bit of that, if anything. Where did that come from? What's the inspiration behind that? Are you going to tell me that, well, when I was a child, I wanted to play piano?
I did play piano as a child. So yeah, I come from quite a musical family. So as a kid, I played the flute and the piano. And I when I was learning the flute, I kind of went through all the grades, and I got up to grade 8. And then I just never did anything with it. So and I feel like I learned how to pass these grades, but I didn't actually learn how to play the instrument. So now I've gone back to the piano. I'm determined to learn to just how to play rather than focusing on exams or anything. But that kind of has its own frustrations in some ways, because I can't read piano music that well. So I can read flute music fine, but piano music's a bit different. So if I want to sight read, I have to play something really, really basic, which is a bit frustrating. But I'm enjoying it, and throughout lockdown, it passed a lot of time for me. So and I was doing something productive and that I enjoy. So it's been it was a good purchase. I'm quite happy, but yeah, it takes up a lot of time.
Yeah, music is I mean, I love music. I love listening to music and attempting to play music. Pardon me, sorry. But as you say, it is. They say, don't they, it's better to practice for 10 minutes a day than play 1 hour a week, right? Because it's kind of muscle memory. I mean, I remember learning to read guitar tablature, which it's not actual music, quote unquote. It's not quavers and all that sort of thing. But I feel once you're familiarized with the language that you're trying to play in, that really helps a lot. Because I love the expression you said there, you learn to play for the grades but not how to play the instrument. And that's such a keen distinction. One of my friends, they learned guitar and they were taught, and they were like, oh yeah, well, they understood musical theory, and that's just something I had no comprehension of. I was I can pick it up and make it go plinkety plonkety noise, and have fun with it, but no actual base knowledge. And it's interesting how those are two different things.
Yeah.
So the question in there was what do you where do you want to sort of get to with your piano playing?
I guess I want to be able to pick up some music and just play it, which I can't do at the moment. I almost have to kind of memorize it to some extent at the moment. I don't know if you know the composer Ludovico Einaudi.
I'm not that familiar with classical composers.
Okay, well, you should look him up because he's amazing. He's a modern classical Italian composer, and it's just the most relaxing, lovely piano music you could ever imagine. I listen to him all the time, and I've got a couple of his books, but it's ever so slightly beyond my ability level at the moment. So if one day if I can pick up one of his books and just play it, I'll be super, super happy.
It's quite funny actually, because even as I said that myself, I really enjoy piano music, but a lot of the piano music I listen to is video game soundtracks.
Well, it's funny you should say that, because one of the books I have downstairs that I'm working on at the moment is the Final Fantasy music. I've never played Final Fantasy, but I love it was my colleague Chris showed me the book, and I was like, oh, this is great. So I've been learning a couple of things from Final Fantasy.
Which pieces have you looked at? A lot of this is a nerdy channel. A lot of the people I know, myself included, love Final Fantasy.
I'm going to pronounce this wrong. Is it Zanarkand?
Oh, Zanarkand. Yeah, nice.
Yeah, so that's probably my favorite out of the book. I'm currently learning Tifa's theme. See, I'm just saying words now, because I don't play the game, so I don't know. I'm just kind of. But the thing with these pieces of music is that they're not actually that complicated, but they're just so beautiful. It's so lovely to listen to. So as soon as I heard Zanarkand, I was like, I have to learn this piece of music. And yeah, just kind of spent it took me a few, it probably took me 3 or 4 weeks, but I nailed it, and I was like, I play it all the time, and I'm not bored of it yet. So.
Like that's ruddy impressive, if you don't mind me saying, Rachel. That's pretty good.
I'm very determined. Once I've decided I'm going to do something, it happens pretty much. So.
It's it. I mean, it sounds like it.
I'm not sure if this is a positive skill or not at the moment. I just kind of kill myself trying to I'm like, but I've decided I'm going to do it now, so I have to do it, and there's no giving up. So I don't know. Like I say, I don't know if that's good or bad at the moment. I haven't decided yet, but I'm surviving with it at the moment. So.
I mean, I think it's a positive skill. It shows a bit of conviction. I mean, if I were to play devil's advocate, I suppose, would you rather be someone, and I kind of have done this in the past, where you're like, well, I'll do X, Y, and Z, and then just never pursue it, like it's that's very much the antithesis. That's probably an unfair example, but
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely things that I still want to do. Whether I'll ever get to do them, I don't know, but maybe I'll win the lottery one day and I won't have to work, and then I've got time to pursue all of these other things. But
I mean, is that that is not, the, I'm going to say challenge. I'll say the main challenge of adulting, right? Like, it's, I always joked, I loved playing video games as a kid, and I had all the time in the world to play the same 5 games because I couldn't afford new ones. And now, I can occasionally afford to buy a game. I have a huge library and no time to play them.
Yes, yeah. It's frustrating being an adult.
Yeah. So you'd like to play that type, a lot of music? What type of stuff do you like to listen to, or is that are they directly kind of linked?
So it depends what I'm doing. If I'm doing a piece of work and I'm concentrating, it's more modern classical rather than kind of your typical classical music. I'm sorry if you can hear my cat meowing in the background right now. So, I actually really like, probably for a psychotherapist it feels very inappropriate, but I really like inappropriate comedy music. So I like the Lonely Islands. I like Flight of the Conchords. My partner and I have just discovered this Australian guy on YouTube called Tom Cardy. If you haven't heard of him, look him up. He is hilarious. But like I say, it feels a little bit inappropriate sometimes, but we've all got a laugh, I guess. So
do you know,
he just has the most ridiculous songs.
It's funny you say that, because I think a lot of the, ironically, psychotherapists that I know of, therapists that I know of, they're all to work even in a psychology field, you kind of have to have a really dark sense of humor. Because if you can't laugh at the deepest, darkest recesses of the human existence, you just cry, right?
Yeah, this guy's clearly had issues in the past, but he's got a creative outlet and he's doing this music, and honestly I laugh out loud listening to his little songs. They're just so funny.
The first when you said comedy artist, the first one that came to my mind was Tenacious D. Jack Black.
Yeah, I went through a Tenacious D phase when I was younger. I feel like it's evolved to other things now, but
that's fair enough. I mean, that's whatever you enjoy. If you enjoy it, you enjoy it.
Yeah.
So I think, let me just go back. So with the walking, you say you just sort of follow someone. If that were me, and again maybe it's because I'm kind of I'm a bit of a, I like to do 100 things at once if possible. So I'd be there, I'd be enjoying the walk, but I'd be listening to a podcast or an audio book to be getting through that as well. Do you go and just, it's a bit of a buzzword, but mindfully just enjoy the experience?
I think because there's so many people, there's usually about 20 to 30 of us there. So generally I'm talking to somebody.
Socializing.
Yeah, I know, right? I've got there's quite a few people, core people that are there on most of the walks. So I've got to know them quite well, but there's often, new people all the time. So there's always somebody new to talk to. But there are times when I'm just kind of walking on my own and appreciating the scenery and just kind of thinking. I think one of the main things I like about going out walking is that I am away from the cafe or clients or anything like that. I leave my phone at home. So that is my time. That is definitely my free time. Like, you know, I can be there and I can just pretend that nothing else is happening. Whereas, you know, if I have a day off and I'm at home, like the temptation to answer messages or open my emails, or, you know, like I can't resist that. So yeah, I guess there is a bit of mindfulness involved in it, because that's my escape. And it feels like my only proper escape at the moment is, you know, I'm on top of a mountain and there is no signal here. So, so that I can't do anything right now.
No, I think you need that. I mean, and obviously, like with walking, it's good for your health as well. You know, I always joked like I enjoy running, and it's more for it's as much for my mental health as my physical health. You know, because you can focus on nothing else. Like in that moment, nothing else exists apart from the run or the walk.
And breathing.
And breathing,
so for me, it's like, can I still breathe? Like, but yeah, I'm really lucky. I live really, you know, there's like a little footpath down to the river where I am. So, you know, in within 5 minutes, I'm on the river path and I can go for a run along the river. And yeah, or I can be in Sefton Park really quickly. Like, you know, there's just, I do feel really lucky about where I am, because, you know, I can go for a run or for a walk and just appreciate what is around me. And I just think that keeps me mentally healthy as well.
I mean, you know, if you've been with us before, you'll know that I am not afraid to big up Liverpool, and you know, I never say that it's perfect or make any bold claims like that, but it would just with that type of thing, it does have a lot to offer. I remember during my student days back in the day, just walking down the docks can be so nice at times. There's something about watching like a nice body of water that is just soothing for the soul.
Yeah.
So that's really good. Okay, let's move on to another little question then. So we know Sugar and Dice's 5th birthday is coming up. So what is sort of coming up next for like both, you know, Sugar and Dice and both in your sort of therapeutic kind of work? What's the next big thing? I know we touched on this a little bit for Sugar and Dice before.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So I'm hoping. So I'm very shortly going to be advertising for staff, so that somebody else can kind of be a manager, which will kind of give me a bit more time to step back and work on marketing and events and things like that. So getting all these ideas up and running. Yeah, it's just all about the events at the moment. I really, really want to kind of give myself time to get that up and running and get, you know, the cafe is not full 100% of the time. So it's like, how do we get the cafe to be full all, you know, 100% of the time? So that's what I want to kind of step back and focus on in that sense. And then with the therapy work, I've only done kind of one-to-one therapy so far. So I'd really like to start a therapy group now that we're allowed to meet other people. That's quite exciting. So I kind of want to start a therapy group. I think my first group, I'm going to kind of go for people, or, you know, hopefully get people who want to kind of work with social anxiety. And the plan is to run this group in the cafe and hopefully use some board games to kind of get people socializing with each other and sort of looking at, you know, why they feel anxious in social situations and what kind of tools can they use to improve that situation. But then I'm also just about to go on a 4-day course, which is all about outdoor therapy. So it's not just about delivering therapy outdoors, it's about using the outdoors in the therapy work. And bringing, and you know, and I haven't been on the course yet, so I don't know much more than that, but it's about, you know, how can we bring the environment in and how can we use that to, you know, therapeutically with clients. So hopefully once I've done that course, I can sort of start doing it. Obviously, like, I'm doing the course and then it's going to be horrible weather and all of this, but hopefully I can get out there and do some work outside as well. So that I'm not just sat in a gloomy room all day every day.
No, that again, like, that sounds really innovative, really like necessary, like the kind of thing that I can see the benefits, apart from, as you say, British weather, which, you know, always reliable and helpful.
Yes,
I always like,
but it's not all about the sunny days.
Well, no, that was a good one. I'll give you that. It's not all about the sunny days. That's good. This is one that I always like to ask. Like, what would be your ultimate blue sky no limitations kind of idea? Like if there was no limitations, what would you like to do?
So yeah, I was thinking, I was like, oh, if I could do any job in the world, what would it be? And the first thing that popped up in my mind was to be a panda keeper at Chengdu, at the center in China where they breed pandas. I don't know if you've ever watched videos on YouTube, but I'm just in love with the place. Like they have hundreds of baby pandas, and I'm like, what could go wrong with this job? Apart from the fact that I don't speak Chinese, and all of that aside, that would be amazing. Yeah.
No, I mean it's meant to be ultimate blue sky, like.
But the problem is, I'm one of these people that like I'll see, I'll meet somebody and they'll tell me about their job, and I'm like, oh, I want to do that. And it's like there's not enough time in the world to do all these jobs. Like I'd love to do some sort of wildlife conservation, or like, the WWF is one of my favorite charities, and I'd love to go and do something that makes a difference in the world, and like, be a part of that. But equally, I'd love to go and play in an orchestra that plays for, I don't know, a David Attenborough program or something. There's so many things that I just, would love to go and have a go at, but it will never happen because I never have time. But I can dream.
This is perhaps, I don't know, maybe a leading question, but it's funny you kind of say that and frame it in that context, because what I've heard through this conversation is that you had these dreams as a child and you've achieved them, right? Like you're living the dream.
Yeah.
Like, so I'm no therapist. Maybe don't put yourself down. Like you never know what's possible.
Maybe
right?
It will happen then, but I think these are future Rachel jobs. It's not going to happen right away.
That's fair enough. So I think that's another way to look at the question then. What would, if you had no limitations for, say, sugar and dice, what would you like to do?
God, who knows? I mean, I'd love to do more. I've got all these ideas for doing kind of work that doesn't involve generating income. So, which when you're running a business doesn't help you run a business. I'd love to do more with, mental health, not charge people to come in, because I don't, like I say, I don't know how this would work. We've got a couple of GPs that kind of social prescribe people to come to Sugar and Dice, and we offer a reduced kind of charge for that. But it would be great to be at a point where we can say, you can be prescribed to come to Sugar and Dice and there's no charge, or and I don't think this can ever happen realistically, because it is a business and there's got to be money coming in to pay the staff or whatever.
And mental health provision in the UK, we can dream.
Yeah, that would be great. So something like that would be awesome. I had another thought and I've completely forgotten what it was, but it's like,
I mean, so one question I would ask is that, like, have you ever thought about, again, the term maybe sounds a bit dirty, but like Sugar and Dice, like franchise? Do you ever envisage a world where there'll be more than one Sugar and Dice?
Yeah, before I started Sugar and Dice, I did a business course, and for them to run one successful business was not enough, and I ended up saying like, oh well, I can franchise it, as a bit of a panicked, like, this is how we can expand. In reality, managing one is enough at the moment. Like, there's all these problems that pop up that, I think people have a very romanticized idea about what running a cafe is like, and they don't think about all these problems that could come up, and the time that they take to fix, or the stress that they take to fix. And I spend an awful lot of my free time, like, time when I'm not actually working, fixing problems. Like, so for example, like the water just stopped for 4 hours the other day. Like, you can't run a cafe with no water. Like, do you know what I mean? And it's little things like that people don't even think about. And, that's not the first time this has happened. So yeah, there's lots of issues that, I don't know, it just ends up taking a lot of time.
This is maybe
having one is enough.
This is maybe trying to tap into that entrepreneurial kind of area, but what are sort of the most common issues that you run into that people maybe don't know about? So I can, for example, imagine someone saying, well, like, Rachel, Sugar and Dice is busy. Why don't you expand and make more room, or move, or something like that, and maybe not have the conception of all the other things that would go with that?
Yeah, so we are busy, and people always sort of say to me, oh well, I walk past and it's always busy, and I think that's people's perception. But there are times when we're not busy. So there are times when we're not completely full, and we're not at capacity, and we're not kind of taking as much as we could do. But equally, like on a Saturday and a Sunday, we're turning people away, especially at the moment, because we haven't got all the tables back yet, because we don't want to pack people in like we did before. So, I can see how the perception from the outside is, oh, you should get a bigger place. But, with a bigger place, you've obviously got bigger rent, and then, you need more staff, and, they cost a lot of money. And there's all these, then it costs more money to heat the place, or, it costs more money for aircon, or, it all kind of costs a lot more money very, very quickly. And actually, I think one of the reasons that Sugar and Dice is successful and does feel like a safe place at the moment is because it's small. So, I can stand behind the counter and I can see every single person in the cafe. So if somebody picks up a rule book, I know that they need help with their game. Or, if somebody picks up a menu, I can see that they probably want to order something and I should go over quite quickly. So we've got a lot of control at the moment with it being so small. And I feel like if we got bigger, would it be the same? Would it lose all of that? And I think that's what makes it good and what people like, and that the atmosphere would be different, because you'd need more people to create the same amount of noise. And so it's not as simple as just, oh, you should get a bigger place. There's an awful lot of things to consider, and sadly money's a big part of that. And it's so I guess in answer to your question before, like, if the options were limitless, we'd have a huge space, but we'd break it off into lots of little rooms so that we could still have the atmosphere and control it in a different way. I was looking at a bigger place just before COVID, and I'm so glad that we didn't quite take the plunge, because I think if we had a place that had a much bigger rent, we wouldn't have made it. So there's a lot of blessings in having a small place.
So a couple more questions have kind of come to mind. So I apologize that I didn't get to prerequisite these with you.
Okay.
But the first one is, like, what are, if any, like the questions that you maybe get the most, or you're maybe sort of sick of answering? Like, are there any questions that you get all the time that almost get annoying?
Everybody asks me if I know the rules to every single game. Everybody, they're like, oh, do you know all of these games? I'm like, no. Like, I don't think anybody knows all of these games. So yeah, if I had £1 for every time somebody asked that, I'd be doing quite well. Everybody always asks what my favorite game is. And these questions don't annoy me, but I'm always like, well, I feel like that's asking somebody to choose their favorite child. Like, and it's like, it depends what mood I'm in, or it depends who I'm with, or, what game I want to play. So yeah, there's that kind of thing. But I think generally speaking, like, I meet people, like say at the walking group, I'll meet people and they'll be like, oh, what do you do? And I almost want to just sort of go, oh, I work in a cafe to put the conversation to bed. Because you say, oh, I own a board games cafe, and they're like, wow, like, tell me more. And I'm like, oh God. So I feel like I spend a huge amount of time talking about this cafe, and like sometimes I'm like, it's not fed up of it, but sometimes it would be nice to, I don't know how to word this, like people just get so excited about it, and sometimes I'm just like, do you know what, I'm here on a walk, I'm in halfway up a mountain to get away from it, like, and I'm still being asked, the ins and outs of it all the time. And it's great publicity, and it brings people in, but yeah, sometimes I'd like a day off where I'm just, I just work in a cafe and it's actually not that exciting and nobody wants to ask any questions about it, kind of thing.
Yeah, there's that kind of like meme being like involved in psychology. It's like when someone hears you do psychology and tell you all your problems, and you're like, oh, that's great, but I'm not on the clock, so like, that's nice.
Sometimes I joke. Yeah, sometimes I'll be like, and it'll be £40 if you want to carry on, like, but yeah, it genuinely doesn't bother me, but there are times when I'm like, do I actually want to tell people what I do, or do I want to just kind of deflect the question a little bit?
Yeah, no, and you know what, like in a weird way, that makes a lot of sense because, you know, ultimately for you, like it might be the first time they hear it, but it's like the millionth time you've told the story, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
like, you know, it is what it is, especially when you're at a point where you're deliberately trying to relax or not engage with work, and then all people want to do is talk about work.
yeah.
Like,
And people are always like, genuinely, people are trying to be super helpful. They're like, oh, you should do this. And I'm like, we do. Like, you know, or, oh, you should get this game. And I'm like, yes, we have 5 copies. And, you know, and it's, people are genuinely trying to be helpful. But sometimes I'm like, oh, yeah, I do. So,
I actually remember once I pitched to you guys like a board game speed dating event. I remember
and
once.
you know what? That is on my never-ending list of things to look into. I genuinely like haven't dismissed it. It's time.
Yeah, like I mean, I have no idea how that would work like nowadays. But like,
Yeah, I think it would be interesting, especially seeing as we've got such a big LGBT following. It's like, you know, do you then separate it out, and, you know, we've got male female dating, and then we've got LGBT dating, or, you know, how do you do that without discriminating or excluding or upsetting? Like, you know, it's like, how do we make it completely inclusive? You know, that's the kind of, because I think it's an awesome idea, and like I say, we get loads of people on dates, so it's clearly like a thing that people want, but then how to run it as an event is something different.
honest, I mean, like now we're just talking shop now. But like, I almost would
Yeah.
just be like, the whole point is that everyone at the event is there because they want a date, and then just at the end you just fill out your card, and then like if 2 people say yes, they get matched, and it's like it doesn't matter who's, because if you know, if you put down that you like them, then you like them, you know.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, well, maybe we should talk more about this another time.
Just as I say, I remember it was like a fever dream, but it's just those kind of like whimsical ideas because I was that person. This would be a great idea.
Yeah.
But it's just, you know, we talked a bit about the spaces that board games create, and like, you know, you say a lot of like first dates. I mean, I've been in there with like, you know, like my partner at the moment. We like frequent Sugar and Dice. It's nice for that type of thing. So let's just talk a little bit about then, because we spoke about just before we sort of came on air, as it were, about like how have you found the response to Sugar and Dice, and how does that make you like feel?
Yeah, so we were talking about a little bit about this earlier. People seem to love Sugar and Dice, like, you know, and people get very enthusiastic about it.
You
So
don't
we're, you
say.
know, so obviously, like, I work in the cafe quite, you know, 3 days a week at the moment. So I'm there quite a lot, and, you know, people will be chatting to me, and I'll be telling them about it, and they're like, oh my god, like, you know, I love this place, or, you know, whatever. When they find out I'm the owner, like, they're just like, oh my god, like, you know, this is awesome, like, and, you know, people just kind of go to town. I used to find it so embarrassing. Like, I'd be like, oh god, please stop, like, I can't listen to this anymore. Like, I really struggled with it. I've got, like, I do like it now, and it's really sweet that people like it. And but yeah, it took me a long time to kind of learn to take the compliment, learn to take the compliment and believe it as well. So yeah, so to hear people get excited about it, and, you know, we'll get groups that come in and it'll be their first time, and they're like, oh my god, like, look at all these games, and I'm like, actually, this is quite a small collection of games, and they're like, what? Like, you know, so it's just, yeah, it is lovely. And, you know, during lockdown, because so many people love it, like, you know, I got so many messages of support from people. You know, people were finding me on Facebook and sending me little messages saying that they hope I'm okay. And I think there was a period where, like, I didn't really do any social media posts, and there wasn't really any reason. I just kind of ran out of things to write about during lockdown, and customers were like checking in, like, oh, is everything all right? Like, you know, and I'm like, yeah, like, it's fine. So it's super sweet the way people respond, and people are always offering me help, you know, and I'm like, you're a customer, like, no, you can't be doing that, like, you know, it's fine. Or, you know, people are like, oh, I can see you're busy, do you need me to come and do some dishes? And I'm like, no, you're a customer. Like, so it's just, yeah, it's super sweet, and it, you know, it is very heartwarming, and it does, you know, when you, even when it's really, really busy there, when people are being so positive about it, like, you know, I go home with a massive smile. It sounds really cheesy, but I go home smiling, you know, and sometimes we close at 10 o'clock, but I'm still there chatting to people until 10:30 because they're so excited about it. And, you know, it is very, very sweet, and it's nice. And it's made me give other places positive feedback, like directly as well, because I'm like, well, I like that, so if I've gone somewhere else and I really like it, you know, I take the time to leave a review or tell them, or because I know how nice it feels to kind of have that. So yeah.
In a weird way, I mean, again, like I'm saying this as a customer or someone that openly loves Sugar and Dice, you know, we kind of oversell, I think, particularly in like the streaming space and the content creation space, the phrase like community. Everyone's trying to build a community. We want to, you know, and people build those type of spaces for different reasons. But I genuinely feel with like Sugar and Dice, you have fostered that sense of community a little bit. Like even if you're only there and like you're with friends and you go because they're on a day trip or whatever, the atmosphere, we've kind of mentioned that a few times, like when you get through the door is really unique. That kind of like welcoming, like, you know, we've all been to places where like I'm gonna say tentative about asking a member of staff or something, or it goes the other way where staff are like on you like flies.
Yeah.
You know, and it's a bit much. Whereas like, you know, with Sugar and Dice, like you said there, you're able to observe, you're able to like, oh, see someone needs some help, and then you go over and you try and assist them. That feeling's like really there for me, you know, like as a customer. And even to like elements where like I know I've, you know, played games for the first time in Sugar and Dice, like Boss Monster for example, and like I have like really fun memories of playing that game with people. And then when I've played the game again, it's like those two things are linked. Or like I've bought a game from playing it in Sugar and Dice, and then the two are kind of like interlinked, you know. Like it or not, you know, like my first D&D experience was at Sugar and Dice. I'm gonna take that with me, you know.
Yeah. I guess, you know, I guess people do have a lot of, you know, first experiences is there, like, you know, and it's, yeah, people come in and they don't know that there's more to board games than Cluedo and Monopoly, and they come in and they're just so amazed. And then you show them a game like Pandemic, which is cooperative, and you're all working together to beat the game, and they're, you know, people are mind blown by this concept. And it's so much fun to be able to create that space for people. So yeah, I love it when people are like, oh, can you recommend a game, like, and I'll take some over, and they're like, oh yes, and you'll teach them this game, and then you'll see them playing it like again and again and again, and that is a really nice feeling.
You know, it's that like people kind of joke. There's that joke with like whenever you go to like a restaurant or something that you always end up ordering the same thing because you know it's good. Like I kind of do that when I go to Sugar and Dice. I'm like, okay, well I definitely want to play this and this because they've got it and I don't own it. And then I'm like, but I almost don't have time to try something new because I want to play all the other games I know I like.
Yeah.
And as you say, you've got a rotating, expanding like collection. Like you do a really good job of showcasing the new stuff on social media and things like that. Like, so yeah, this is just one big long compliment, I guess, on my part, which is bad hosting.
Yeah.
But like it just works, and it just, you know, I've been to like other similar sort of styles of cafes. You know, it's something that I think we did see pop up, but nothing quite feels the same way Sugar and Dice does. And that ultimately comes down to you and the staff, right?
Yeah. Well, thank you. I do try to be friendly, like, you know. It's like, because it can be quite intimidating if you actually don't know any games, to walk in and see that big wall of games. You're like, oh my god, where do I start? Like, is this going to be super, like, I mean, I remember not even that long ago, you know, maybe 7-8 years ago, playing a game with some people, and I just did not get it, and I was like, oh my god, this is the worst experience of my life. Everyone must think I'm really stupid, like, you know. And it really kind of made me really, really anxious, and I guess from that experience I want to make sure that people come in and they don't feel that, and, you know, they can come and have fun and pick up a game within 5 minutes and be playing and having a nice time. So I guess I'm hyper vigilant in that sense of, I don't want to just ignore people and for them to come and be like, open a game, look at it for 10 minutes and go, nah, it's not for me. when actually, like, you know, there's a game for everybody in there. I'm convinced of it.
I mean, I would 100% say that, like, some of my favorites that I've played at Sugar and Dice and then have played since or bought, like Boss Monster is one. That's great. I remember playing that there with my friend. Cube Quest is another fun one.
Mm-hmm.
Like, again, like saying that in like a quote unquote post COVID era sounds a bit weird, but like you flicking cubes at your opponent's cubes and cubes fly everywhere, and it's just silly fun, right?
There's a lot of getting out of your seat to pick up cubes off the floor as well in that one.
And I'm not gonna ask the question of what your favorite game is, but you sort of told us a bit about what you like. So I suppose to frame it another way, what are your favorite type of games? Like, you walk in to Sugar and Dice, you bought a bunch of friends. Like, what sort of stuff do you want to be playing?
It's so hard because it depends who I'm with. Like I say, I guess if I was going to pick a game that I wanted to play, I quite like worker placement games. So one of my favorites is called Viticulture. So it's all about making wine. And it's not because it's about making wine that I like it, but it's like the artwork is beautiful, and you have to place your kind of people down to perform certain actions. So, and I think with Viticulture, it's like the whole theme of the game, like, you know, so you literally have to plant grapes in order to then harvest your grapes, to crush them up, to bottle them, to then fulfill an order. And I don't know what it is about that game, but I really, really like it. And I've never got bored of it. And I play it again and again and again. And yeah, I've got the expansions, but I think I've only played one of them once because actually the base game is enough. And I just think it's beautiful. And it's nice to enjoy a glass of wine whilst playing it, obviously. But, you know.
Yeah, I know we said that before as well, but I think just even so, like, yeah, that I think many people who listen to this will maybe go, oh, that reminds me of this video game, because the farming sims are so popular. Games like Stardew Valley or Harvest Moon and Animal Crossing, even, although you can't make wine in that. But I do think, like, you are right. There's something different that I mean, weirdly enough, I was at a conference today when they talked about board games and things like that and how different they are to like video games. But there is something different about physically having like your resources like in hand and planting your people and, you know, that type of motion. So I think the fact that that type of game is one of your favorites is lovely. And it's funny that you see things go the other way, where you see video games then create board games. And so many people are like, oh, it's just not the same.
I think I might be wrong saying this, but Plague Inc. was a video game before it was a board game.
I think that may be correct, yeah.
I think that's true, and people often come in and they go, "Oh, Plague Inc." Like, you know, I've never played the video game, but I think there are differences between the two. But Plague Inc., the board game, is a great game. Like, I played it a few days ago with some friends, and it's just, yeah, it's like the reverse of Pandemic. But it's just good fun.
Okay, I am conscious of time. I don't want to take too much of your time. I will ask, maybe because, you know, you're the type of person that would know. Have you got any board games that you're really excited about that are coming out that maybe, you know, listeners at home haven't quite got the chance to get their hands on just yet?
I went to the UK Games Expo last month, and there were a lot of, I mean, it was much smaller this year than it usually is. There's a couple of games coming up that I think are going to be super popular. So one of them is Deck Chairs on the Titanic, which is on Kickstarter. Well, it's funded on Kickstarter, so we did put a pledge in for that one. But you've got all these like little deck chairs, but as the boat kind of tips in the waves, like all the deck chairs kind of move around, and it's got all these really cute little deck chair pieces. So I think that one's a good one to look out for, that I'm quite excited about. And then I said before, I like animals, so there was another game, I think it was called Snapshot, which is going to be coming onto Kickstarter very soon, and it's all about going out and capturing the photographs of different animals. And I just saw that and I was like, yes, you put my name down for your Kickstarter, like, immediately.
Nice.
So they're probably the main two that we saw there that I was like, yeah, definitely want to get on board with those.
That's pretty good. Okay. The last few questions I have are all quick fire ones, and full disclosure to listeners, I do send these to my guests ahead of time. But the idea is, and I always completely admit I kind of nicked the idea from Desert Island Discs. But you're going on a desert island retreat. It's a retreat. You're not stranded. You're choosing to go for vacation purposes because self-care is important. You're going. What do you take? And you can take one film or one DVD, shall we say, including box sets, one album, one book, and in this special case, I usually say video game, but we'll say game or board game specifically. What do you take with you?
Okay, so I'm not a big film buff and I'm not a big video gamer, so I was thinking about these for a long time. Film-wise, I think I mentioned the Lonely Islands before, which is a comedy band, and they have a film called Popstar, Never Stopping, and it's like a mockumentary about a pop star. So again, it just makes me laugh. So that would be my film. One album, again, I mentioned it already, Tom Cardy, just silly, makes me giggle, but they're not just silly, they're really good songs as well. So, he kind of ticks a lot of boxes. Book, I absolutely love His Dark Materials trilogy. I love everything about that. I could read those books again and again and again. And then board game, it's so hard to pick just one.
I'll let you have the expansions as well.
So probably board game, it probably would be Viticulture. Viticulture or something like, Taco Cat Goat Cheese Pizza, because it's a quick, silly, make me laugh kind of game. But I would struggle to really just pick one out of all the board games that we have.
And that is completely understandable. I always, at the end of these, like to offer you the opportunity. Have you got any questions for me?
I feel like I have so many questions that we could spend another hour and a half, another hour and a half chatting. But I will bother you next time you're in the cafe with with a lot of those questions. Just because I want to talk more about like the charities that you're involved with and the kind of geeky side of psychology that you're involved with. So, but like I say, I feel like it would be such a long conversation. Like I don't know if now is the time and place for it.
That is fair enough. It sounds like a really interviewish thing, but I always just think it's quite nice to turn the tables a little bit and just be like, yeah, no, you can ask me something. But if that...
I don't know where to start. That's the problem. Like, there's so many different avenues.
Well, I mean, that encapsulates the beauty of what I tried to do when I set up this podcast. Anyway, it's just talking to people about what they do, because I personally find that really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So all it remains for us to do really is bring the episode to a close. So, Rachel, I want to say thank you very much for joining me. I appreciate and respect the fact you spent some of your time with me. I want to say thanks to everyone.
Thank you for having me.
I want to say thanks to everyone who's joined us and listened. It means a lot. So yeah, we will just sort of say goodbye. I hope you've enjoyed this episode as much as I have. Rachel, as ever, I have been psyched to be with you. It's been a real pleasure. I'm just gonna move over to the It's Ending thing for the Twitch viewers. And yeah, thanks so much for watching, everyone, and listening. We will see you again very soon. Take it easy, look after your mind, body, and soul, and we'll see you again. Bye bye.